Video 2, Immigration Experiences. In this video, I want to highlight some common features of the immigrant's life. There are features you will often hear immigrants describing or reading texts about immigrants or written by immigrants. Before beginning, let me stress that there's a huge variety of experiences. This has to do with personality. Some people are just more flexible than others. Some are more optimistic than others. And no less so, circumstances of immigrants and immigration can differ widely. It's difficult to put in the same basket a refugee from Syria living in a camp in Greece and not knowing what's the next thing that's going to happen with them, or a software engineer from India or from Israel living in San Francisco. And yet they may have some things in common because both are immigrants. Naturally, some features will be more or less relevant based on personality and circumstances. So here are 5 facets of the immigration experience or of immigration experiences. We'll continue with our fictional Sarah Fine, who immigrated to New York in 1885. 1. Difficulties on the way. The first feature is definitely more relevant when we think about immigration in the past. Immigrants from poorer background and immigrants without permits. The way to the new country may be perilous, full of dangers from natural elements and ruthless people. We've all seen pictures of walking through the desert landscape, whether in Mexico looking for the US border or of Jews from Ethiopia trying to reach Israel by way of Sudan. We also saw pictures of refugees on boats that can hardly hold them. Both my grandmothers came to mandatory Palestine in such ships. They were also both stopped by British patrols. The danger often being from legal officers and sometimes from criminals preying on immigrants and not from the natural sources. Sarah Fine's travels were not the worst imaginable. Yet sea voyages in the lowest classes or in the transatlantic steamship would still be very grueling at the end of the 19th century. The owners of the ships tried to squeeze as many people as possible into the holdings of the ship. Privacy, there was no privacy. The smell from the seasick people in the belly of the ship must have been horrible. I can't imagine how glad Sarah was when she reached land. But then she also had to worry that some official in the port may turn her away and tell her, no, you cannot enter the US because some law that she couldn't understand. Losing social networks and reforming them. When you leave your home country, you are disconnecting yourself from the people around you. This is not only a matter of risking loneliness, though that's definitely a feature of immigration experience, but losing a kind of safety net of people that may help you if you are in need or help you in your everyday life. Sarah left behind all the people she knew, the people who may help her find a job, the people who will take care of her if she would get sick, the people who may find her a shidduch, a husband. Happily, immigrants are often very good at creating new communities, new networks of friendships and new families. They tend to move to neighborhoods that become immigrant havens, that all the immigrants from a specific country move to the same neighborhood. They form organizations and institutions that foster a community. Sarah walks around the lower east side of New York, where you can hear more Yiddish than English at that time, because so many immigrants settled there. I told you that her second cousin gave her a job, but he turned out to be more interested in using her to make money than in helping his family from the old country. Nonetheless, she found another cousin who was a more recent immigrant, and they moved in together, saving money by sharing a room. In the little time they have left from work, they attend a synagogue or maybe a Yiddish-speaking branch of the Socialist Party. Number 3, disorientation, culture and language barriers. Immigration is a deeply disorienting experience. You are very confused a lot of the time. You are in a country you don't know. You may not speak the language and certainly do not understand some of its local nuances. The culture is different. I mean, the basic expectations of how one should behave and how one should look. Sometimes it's minute things like how close you can stand to other people or how loud you can speak in public without drawing attention. The disorientation can feel very bodily. The climate is different, the smells, the taste, the sounds are different. Adjusting yourself to this new place draws a lot of mental energy. There's a sense of real shock, real disorientation. So disorientation and culture shock are usually most powerful at the beginning, but for many immigrants, they may stay with you for the rest of your life. You'll never feel fully at home. Different aspects of the new culture or language will never be clear and will always be confusing, or else some aspects will never be acceptable. You may understand it, but you can't accept that this is how things are done because your way is better. Sarah has a great shock reaching New York. It's a big industrial city, and she mostly knew her small town, her shtetl. Everybody seems to be in a hurry, and strangers walk past her, shoving her, rubbing against her. At first, she does not speak English at all, but slowly she picks it up. But she picks up basic English, street English. When people speak in a high register, she has trouble understanding what they say, even after 20 years, even after 40 years. She eventually gets used to most things about America, but she will never understand why her sons love that silly game where you hit the ball with a stick and then run around. She will never accept that that's how they spend their time. 4, facing xenophobia and prejudice. People tend to like people who are similar to them. Conversely, they also tend to dislike people who are different. Sometimes this tendency slips into hatred and fear of people outside your country, hatred of foreigners. This is called xenophobia. Xeno means stranger in Greek, and phobia, of course, means fear. Immigrants often suffer directly from it. It can be in a form of officials harassing them. It can be bad treatment in the workplace. It can be violence or from everyday citizens, or just overall bad treatment. In addition to all this general mistreatment of immigrants, sometimes treating them as unwanted or as stupid or as a nuisance. So beyond these stereotypes about immigrants in general, there are also specific prejudices about the immigrants' ethnic group. So the time Sarah arrives in New York in the end of the 19th century, each immigrant group has a stereotype attached to them. The Irish are drunken criminals. The Poles are stupid. The Chinese want to take over the West and lust after white women, and the Jews are considered dirty, that they spread disease, and that they are greedy. So that's the kind of stereotypes that Sarah has to deal with. And number 5, nostalgia and optimism. When you are a recent immigrant, there's often, I think, a sense of living in the present. There's so much to do in order to survive and prosper, so much getting used to. You have to deal with the shock. But as an immigrant, the past and the future also have special significance. Immigrants often exhibit nostalgia and longing for their old home, for their old country. It is the place they understood better. It had a sense of belonging. Not all, but many immigrants tend to idealize their old country. Some, of course, remember all too well the reasons that made them leave. But there is a sense of longing for the past. Of course, if you go back to that country, it also changes. So it's a nostalgia for the past, but exhibited by a longing to the return to the old country. Sarah can't forget the pogroms and the restrictions, but she knows that, for instance, it doesn't matter how hard she will try to recreate the food her mother used to make that she loved so much, she wouldn't be able to recreate it. There's nothing like that. The ingredients in the US are just not the same. So she can't make the borscht that her mother used to make. To the opposite direction, looking at the future, I think many immigrants, at least those who choose to immigrate and are not forced to, tend to be optimists. Despite nostalgia, they believe that the future will be better than the past, that you can make your life better. Otherwise, they would not undertake the difficulties of immigration. This optimism is often projected onto the next generation. You can often hear immigrants say that they did it all for their children and grandchildren. They suffered, or they are suffering today, so their children can live in a better country and be more stable, more prosperous. Late in her life, Sarah will tell her grandchildren in English with a heavy accent, "It wasn't easy coming to this strange country, but I did it so you could have a nice life, so you could be successful. So don't waste so much time playing the baseball."